Good evening, everyone. It's M.S.G. I hope you're doing well. And today I'm going to be doing my long awaited Creations of Bile Detachment review. This has been requested by a couple of you, wanting to still delve into Chaos Space Marines. As I've mentioned previously, this channel is for Chaos Space Marines and for Emperor's Children. Though I am an Emperor's Children player primarily, I will still be touching on, Creations of Bile, any kind of Chaos Space Marine stuff when I have the time. This video was supposed to come out yesterday, but I've had a couple of previous engagements which I have been unfortunately, unexpectedly had to attend to. So I hope you'll forgive me for those who were anticipating the video. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this video gets uploaded tonight, and yeah, you've got something to watch while you're on your Saturday night if you're not doing anything. But yeah, with that said, let's get on to the actual coverage of the video. So first of all, it's a brief description that includes, it is a brief description of the rule, an overview of enhancement stratagems and combos, which are highlights. So I'll normally go through every single detachment, enhancement, and rank it out of 1 to 10. And I will give my opinion on it. Obviously, it's very succinct, but most of the information that you'll be getting will be me talking. It won't be on the slides, but I have put a substantial amount of effort into the video in terms of text and stuff for those who prefer to pause the video and read. It'll also include the strengths and any weaknesses which might hamper its overall efficacy. This will also include any kind of matchups, any kind of situations where the effectiveness of the detachment, because there's not really a detachment that's good into everything. Obviously, some things have weaknesses, and this detachment is definitely part of the latter. There are weaknesses to this, but you'll be surprised. Either way, I will include standout units which work well within the detachment, any kind of combinations, a couple of list ideas which I've included at the latter end of the slideshow. For those who are looking to actually get into the Creations of Bile, the lists are not necessarily meant as a you have to bring this list and you will win the game with it. It's more of a, if I was to bring a list based on the research that I've conducted, these are the few units which again show up in every single one. Obviously, there's going to be a couple of units that'll show up in every single list. Others are more of a personal preference. And concluding that, though, I will give an overall rating of the detachment as a whole. So any kind of considerations will be taken into account in terms of an accumulation of all the information which I'm going to put forward to you. Like I said, finally, there's going to be a lot of information. So if you want to pause the video at any point to read them, any kind of, especially on the list part, you're more than welcome to pause it and read it. But with that said, let's continue. So, Creations of Bile originally used to have fights on death. I think it were in 9th edition. It used to be you fought on death if you didn't fight already, which was questionable, shall we say, in terms of balance. But this one is really, really good. Heretic Astartes infantry model get one of the augmentations as listed on the table to the left if you choose it. Alternatively, you can roll 2d6 and randomly determine 2 augmentations from the table. If Bile is your warlord, you can re-roll both or one of the dice. On top of being a competitive model, Bile is pretty much pretty much auto-include in this list, and I'll get to why later on. It's also law friendly that the guy who the detachment's named after is arguably the biggest auto include, simply because you can choose the buffs. But yeah, it's important to note as well that units with the damned keyword do not benefit from this. If they did, I think this would be way too strong, because chaos cults are when they're good, they are good. Like accursed cultists and dark commune blobs are still, haunting a lot of players' memories, I would assume. The buffs, though, are +1 attack, +2%, 2-inch movement, +1 weapon skill, +1 toughness, +1 strength to melee weapons, or +1 ballistic skill. Again, a lot of people already know this, but for those who are unaware, this is obviously a super strong rule, because most of our big data sheets in terms of damage dealers or just overall usefulness are infantry. We do have very good, well, especially Chaos Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines have very good vehicles that do fit what I like to call specialist roles. So there are specialist tanks like the Predators, the Vindicator, Rhinos, etc. They've all got their little niche, which is fantastic. Again, this is also on top of dart packs. So if you get +1 attack, for example, you can still spike the lethals or sustained hits, which is really good. So not only do you get the buff, you also get dart packs on top of it, which is very, very nice and complements the detachment well. You can also determine the augmentations at the start of the battle, which is arguably the strongest part of this detachment. So if I was to attend a tournament and say, right, I'm going to go +1 toughness, and I notice that there is someone who's running, I don't know, like Exocrine, for example, in Tyranids, where they don't really care about your toughness either way, you're going to get wounded on 2s or 3s. Probably not a good idea. Again, you can look at that and go, okay, they're going to die anyway, so I might as well just make them faster, or I might as well make them hit harder or more times. You can also just pretty much pick whatever you're good into, essentially. If you know there's a lot of horde enemies or a lot of groups, whether, for example, like the Guard, where they will try and screen you out on objectives with Guardsmen, Gene Stealer cults, even Eldari. Like Eldari can be a pain in the backside, but that extra 2 inches of movement, you're now running, if not outspeeding, Eldar, which is scary, especially on some units, which we're going to get into. But yeah. So again, this is subjective. I have tried to be as objective as possible, but there are some arguments which are more applicable than others. And that's what I really love about this. There's no, like I've said here, there's no explicit best augment to choose, hence why I've not got a bad or unusable category. You can choose depending on the opponent you're up against, but there are better picks overall for more general picks. So, for example, like I've said here, my personal top 2 are the +1 toughness, which is phenomenal, and +1 strength to melee weapons equipped by models in the unit. Again, really, really strong. Good, I've included +1 attack, +1 weapon skill, and +2 inch move. They're not in order, so you could interchange them at any point. And +1 attack and +1 weapon skill are very situational. And again, I'm going to get into the reasoning in the next slide. You could interchange those at any point, though, because during the research of this video, I watched Dean from now Exalted 40k. He mentions that +1 attack and +1 weapon skill are roughly the same. But yeah, again, if you get lucky, like a combo when you roll. So, for example, at the start, if you decide that you want to determine your augmentations and you get lucky, you get +1 strength and +1 attack, then obviously you're going to want to choose that over something like +2 movement, because you get a better benefit from both of those as opposed to just the one. And finally, the situational one is the ophthalmic enhancement, which is the one that improves your ballistic skill by 1, and I'll explain why. So the reason as to why +1 toughness and +1 strength and melee is so strong is breakpoints. So there's a lot at the moment. There's a lot of strength 4 and strength 5 weaponry out, mainly just dealing with Space Marines, for example. Anything that deals 3 damage and is good at killing Space Marines is also good at killing us. But the +1 toughness in certain circumstances, more often than not, is going to essentially give us -1 to wound. So as I mentioned here, +1 toughness into something like a heavy bolter will essentially give a T4 unit, so your legionaries, and a lord, for example, master of executions, that may help. It pretty much gives them -1 to wound. So it may not help if the enemy has access to reroll wounds or a similar ability, but a majority of the time it will add a layer of survivability, which is always helpful. Toughness 5, Heretic Astartes Infantry, so Legionaries, Chosen, Raptors and Warp Talons. Toughness 6, which is Terminators and Havocs. Toughness 7, which is Possessed. And Toughness 8, Obliterators. Blanket durability buffs, which you don't need to pay any command points or any points for that matter, is always appreciated and can potentially be game-changing. Having that -1 to wound is great, or your opponent going, oh, it's a strength 8 weapon and it's going into a toughness 8 obliterator. They've got a 50% chance to wound you instead of a 66% chance. And mathematically, that might not sound like much, and again, it is a dice game, so they might just scuff the rolls or spike the rolls. But either way, you always want to make sure probability is more in your favour, and a 16% increase is always helpful. To +1 strength in melee, again, can potentially give +1 to wound. Strength 5 and Strength 9 legionaries, so Strength 5 chainswords, Strength 9 heavy melee weapons, Strength 9 Chaos Lords base, and if you pop their chance for glory, they go to Strength 10 because they get the +1 strength stacked with that. Strength 6 possessed, which is great, and Strength 10 obliterators, if you do get into melee with them, it can give you +1 to wound. So, for example, if you're playing into a matchup of other Space Marines, doesn't necessarily need to be loyalist. It could be anything like Khorne, World Eaters, any kind of toughness 4, Emperor's Children, Marine style stat line armies. That extra strength in melee gives you wounding on 3s for just regular chainswords, and you're already wounding on 2s anyway with strength 8 in that circumstance. But if you're up against something like Plague Marines, which are toughness 6, the strength 9 is going to help a lot more because of the way the toughness in certain matches works. So you can punch up into light vehicles with strength 9. Strength 8 is a bit of a weird break point. It's a good break point, but if you want to go to strength 9, it is quite noticeable in the terms of things that you can actually damage reliably, on top of the fact that legionaries get rerolls to wound, one off the objective, and full rerolls to wound on an objective. So they're fantastic. Again, Chaos Lord getting +1 strength is diabolical. You will hit astronomically hard, and there are ways to continue to facilitate that. So onto the +2-inch move, +1 attack, and +1 weapon skill. Why have I just put them in good? So to summarise my opinion or thought process behind this, 40k is a game about board control, and normally armies which are fast tend to have an advantage in getting places first. It's why Eldar were so strong for a while. Any kind of infiltrating army is usually good at dealing with board control, because you can literally just put your guys wherever you want, secure the early points, and then get skirmishing. Extra movement allows for more strategic plays, so move blocking, objective control and denial. It can also increase the threat range of certain infantry units, so that extra 2-inch move can potentially get you into turn an 8-inch charge into a 6-inch charge, which massively increases the odds of it actually kicking off. Extra movement is literally never a bad thing. I don't think of any situation where movement is having extra movement, especially 2-inch movement. So you're essentially getting a third on a majority of your infantry. You're getting a third of their movement added on for free, which I think is pretty wild. I mean, look at Emperor's Children, for example. Like, they're moving at 7, 8 to 9 inches on average, and that is considered quick. So you can move faster than them now, which is really, really good. +1 weapon skill, more reliable hits, which usually equates to more damage. So it has the benefit of countering your -1 to hit. So, for example, if someone wants to pop a stratagem or has an ability where if you're in melee, you're -1 to hit, you kind of counter that pretty much. So you go from a 66% chance to hit at 3s to an 82% chance to hit when you're hitting on 2s. Also means your hammer wielding Chaos Lords will hit on 2s as well, because obviously the Demon Hammer is weapon skill 3, for those who are unaware. Most of our characters do, with that notwithstanding. I think that's the only circumstance where the character doesn't hit on a 2. They do hit on 2s a majority of the time. So +1 weapon skill might be a suboptimal choice if you're running quite a lot of characters, but it does help like units like your Possessed, your Legionaries, just your infantry just hit more reliably, which is always really, really good. +1 attack has more potential damage and can help you compensate for any misses. So like I've said here, much like sustained hits in Dark Packs, if you miss a few hits, you'll usually get a few extra attacks. So sustained hits, for example, usually if you roll a boatload of dice for Warp Talons, you now get an extra 5 attacks on top of that, which then means you potentially might spike the 6s and get more attacks or more auto wounds. It's just really good to have mathematically. However, obviously there's the added risk of missing, because sometimes the dice hate you. But if you're able to access reroll hits in some capacity, then +1 attack is on average a lot better. The more likely, you're more likely to get that potential damage than if you were to use +1 weapon skill. So anything that gets you reroll hits, usually, Master of Executions, for example, he can give you reroll hits if you damage a unit, or if you fight a damaged unit, rather. You also get, that's the one off the top of my head that I can think of, but I'm sure there's others. But yeah, like I said here, +1 attack is better for clearing chaff and can also compensate for damage when you inevitably lose models over the course of the battle. So, for example, if you have a unit that's foot slogging, which you shouldn't be because you should be using rhinos for your infantry, you can just throw them up the board and you'll inevitably lose a couple. So let's say you jump out with a rhino and your enemy overwatches you, they kill, 1 or 2 legionaries. That is attacks that have been missed, but overall, due to the +1 attack, you still get, it doesn't hurt as hard, shall we say. So you'll still be hitting roughly at the same damage with that, and especially with your Chaos Lord, he having an extra attack pretty much guarantees that 1 extra model is going to die. Whereas if you were hitting on 2s and had the +1 weapon skill, you might get more through, but whether or not that's potential damage is higher is definitely not up for debate. +1 attack is usually better in most scenarios. Units which you want to take in 10s, so for example Warp Talons, which are arguably one of our most lethal units, gain an additional 10 attacks overall, which increases their damage output by 20% without any dart packs or any rerolls to hit. Really, really nice, but yeah. So finally we've got the ballistic skill one. As I mentioned at the start, there's obviously no bad choice. Like, having +1 ballistic skill isn't a bad thing, it's actually quite strong. In certain armies, it would be a lot stronger, like Guard or any army that consistently hits on, even 3s actually. It's like Space Marines would be loving that. Most of our range damage comes from vehicles, so not as infantry. So while it's nice to have legionaries hitting on 2s with bolt pistols or plasma pistols, Chosen benefit a bit better from this because obviously they've got combi weapons and all that, and plasma pistols too. You're not going to need that. Your main damage from your infantry comes from melee. You are going to be hitting your enemies that hard, they're going to want to worry about it. Again, you could potentially include Noise Marines now because obviously Noise Marines are included as allies, so they technically would benefit from that. They're probably the best unit with it on, ironically, because hitting on 2s with Noise Marines is ridiculously good. But again, Vindicators, Forge Fiends, and Predators are the prime candidates for range damage dealing. Taking the augment by choice is automatically just going to reduce your effectiveness from your army. So while it's nice to have Havocs, Obliterators, or Noise Marines hitting on 2s, I just don't believe it's worth sacrificing one of the other more applicable augments that your army could benefit from for that +1 ballistic skill. It's just not. You're souping up potentially 2 to 3 units at the expense of your entire army, which is just not on. It's just not a good idea. And finally, you'd need to build your list around the augment, which leaves you open for counterplay and limits your variety. Obviously, this is situational. Your opponent can just not have counterplay options for you. You can have Havocs, for example, which I've mentioned the glaring issues with them in previous videos if you've watched them. I'll just recite it for those who are unaware, because obviously I've not uploaded in a while. But basically, the reason as to why I think Havocs are very inconsistent in general, not primarily, I don't think they're a bad unit. I think Havocs are actually a very interesting unit, and it's such a cool thing to have a dedicated, like, heavy infantry-based weapons team. So, for example, Noise Marines are one of my favourite units in the Emperor's Children, simply because they're heavy weapons, infantry. You can get into places that vehicles may not be able to get into, and you can still deal a lot of damage. Havocs are really good, so if you get them on a roof somewhere, or elevation, you've got them lines of sight, and you can pretty much just las cannon anything that comes nearby. The problem with the Havocs is that they're too specialized, and you're probably wondering why I'm going off on Havocs, and it's relevant to this particular thing. If I'm bringing 3 Havocs and they all have different weapons, so I normally don't mix and match, because I know some people go, oh, you want 2 las cannons and 2 chain cannons, or you want 2 auto cannons and 2 chain cannons, or 2 las cannons, etc. You want to mix and match, which is all well and good, that's nice. But if you're a master of nothing, then for a specialized unit especially, there's no point. You want to put all of your eggs in one basket with a ranged option. So while 4 las cannons are going to be scary and they're going to kill, quite frankly, they're probably going to do a lot of damage to a tank without an invul. They can hit hard. Like, there are times where havocs have spiked, and your dart packs can. I remember distinctly getting 3 5s and 1 6 with havocs on Mark and Nurgle, and just deleting a tank with just pretty much literally no effort. Again, they lose their effectiveness as the game goes on. So if once the havocs have killed what they need to kill, so they're vehicles, monsters, your big opponent, scary monsters, you kind of just you diminishing returns. So if I shoot 4 las cannons into a squad of guardsmen, you're probably going to kill 4 guardsmen, but that's it. You're not actually killing that many of them. It's just quantity over quality. Whereas chain cannon havocs don't move that quick anyway, if I'm not mistaken. They're only movement 5 off the top of my head. And even then, even if they were like 6-inch movement, again, I could be wrong. But oh no, it's Noise Marines are 6-inch movement, havocs are 5. Havocs are very much, they're a turret. You put them somewhere and you shoot stuff from a mile away. Chain cannons are nice into hordes, like, don't get me wrong, 8 shots each at strength 5, 0 AP, 1 damage, with the potential for lethals and sustained, is just disgusting, and you will probably kill like a crappy chaff unit quite easily. It's just not worth dedicating your entire list to bringing that, if that makes sense. Same with obliterators. Like, obliterators are notorious anyway before they got changed in 10th edition for being incredibly swingy with the damage. So having a D3 profile for anti-tank, you can roll 2 1s and just get 2 shots and then miss them both, or miss one and you've just lost out on, quite frankly. Let's say you want to deep strike them in, you want to make a big play, you whiff the rolls, you do a bit of damage, or they spike the saves and they don't die, they turn around and just delete you. And obliterators, once they've had that little go turn, for lack of a better word, they're pretty useless. Like, they're a lot better than havocs in that sense, because they've got the choice of what they can use for their the weapons, for the flesh metal guns. So if you need like a chaff clearer, you've got it. If you need a space marine killer, you've got it with a middle profile. I think it's D6 strength 8 -2 damage, or anti tank. The range is a bit middling because it's only 24 unless you're using the heavy one, which is 18. Yeah, they're just not particularly great, and your opponent's going to know this, and they're just going to screen really well. And if you're deep striking your obliterators, which is what you're going to be doing, it's just they're going to counterpick it. But yeah, that's by the by. You do have indirect fire on obliterators though, which can help. But again, indirect fire, very swingy. So first, we're going to quickly run through the enhancements. So if you want to pause at any point, just feel free to do so. First enhancement is Surgical Precision. I've rated this a 7 out of 10. It's a Heretic Astartes model, excluding Damned only. Bearers' melee weapons have precision, which is really, really nice. As an Emperor's Children player who uses Infractors quite a lot, they're the backbone of my stratagems. So I will usually get the Lord Exultant to kill the unit. Whereas if I'm going for the character, I will just spam all of my infractors to just swing at the character, because that's a lot of attacks going through. But yeah, it's also the cheapest enhancement that Creations of Bile have access to. It's only 10 points, so it's very likely that unless you are milking every single point, you are going to have points left over because of the pricing, and you can just slap this on a Chaos Lord. You can, if you're feeling lucky, you can put it on a Lord Discordant, because it says Heretic Astartes model. It doesn't specify infantry, and it also doesn't specify monster, so you can put it on a Demon Prince as well. They don't benefit from the detachment rule, though, because obviously Lord Discordant is mounted, Demon Prince the monster, it doesn't have the infantry keyword. You get the idea. It's there if you want it, but it would be quite funny to have a Winged Demon Prince run in and just punch the absolute shit out of a character after dealing mortals. If Emperor's Children had something like that, I would take it every game. But again, that's a different army. Yeah, third point, command points are valuable. So this detachment, unlike Veterans of the Long War, which is just gobbling command points up left, right, and center, this one does use quite a lot. But it also gives you the chance to use it twice. So, for example, the heroic challenge stratagem, which allows you to target a character with a character unit. You can just completely bypass that and use it in a different scenario. So obviously, if I've got 2 units of Chaos Lords and I have one that uses heroic challenge because I want to pick off the character, like a Master of Executions or something, then this can be activated at the same time because I can't use the same stratagem twice. This supersedes that rule, which is really, really good. And again, if you don't have the points for Master of Executions, this is a really, really nice thing to do because your Chaos Lord or whoever you put this on will hit hard. Chaos Marine units in general hit hard in melee. Having this is just the icing on a cake, basically. It's just really, really helpful. If you want to have that go turn where you know you're going to die and you want to pick off your opponent's character before they can cause any damage. So again, most characters are the reason why the units are being brought. Even if it's a mirror matchup, if you take down a Chaos Lord, the Legionaries aren't that effective compared to the Chaos Lord. The reason why, or even Emperor's Children, if you kill a Lord Exultant and a unit of Infractors, the Infractors they've got no way to reliably kill Marines. It's just cutting the head off the snake, for lack of a better word. But yeah, again, Master of Executions, like I've mentioned. The pros, obviously, it's 10 points for bringing the detachment, the enhancement. Cons, Master of Executions is a lot more expensive. It's 8 times more expensive. But if you kill a character with him, you'll get a command point, which is the main reason why you're bringing him, because you want him to just take characters out. Dev wounds is nice. You can punch up into tanks and just spike the lethals, and then obviously get the 6s to wound, which is just 2 dev wounds, which is really nice. Again, it's up to you. I would bring this though if I had some spare points over. So I will be trying to hurry this up, by the way, because unfortunately I've got commitments. But yeah. Second enhancement, Living Carapace. I've ranked it a 5 out of 10. You can put it on a Chaos Lord, so that includes a Chaos Lord in Terminator armor. Terminator armor, sorry. Add 1 to the bearer's wound characteristic, and the bearer has a 5-up feel no pain. Just an insane amount of durability. So, for example, I've done some brainstorming, and a Chaos Lord Terminator with this enhancement would have the following stat line: toughness 5, so potentially T6 if you pick the toughness augment, which is something you might want to do. 7 wounds, 2 up armor, 4 up invul, 5 up feel no pain. Incoming damage is halved. So while he is expensive at 110 points, he is incredibly durable. This guy is a pain in the arse. There are situations where if you don't pass your invul save, again, like I don't know, like a character killer like Mephisto runs into you might survive. Like it's genuinely crazy how tanky this guy is. Granted, his melee damage is nowhere near as good as the Chaos Lord. The Chaos Lord is like the damage dealer, mainly due to the Demon Hammer being so strong. But again, it's a very good defensive enhancement. But yeah, it's not very common to see solo Terminator Lords for a reason because they're very slow. But he is a nice action piece if you want him. Although the best action piece in Chaos Space Marines at the minute, solo threat at least, is Cypher, but that is primarily because he has lone operative. But either way, if you want to bring this in a game, I've ranked it as average. It's there if you can afford it. It's 15 points. It's not going to break the bank. It's there if you need it. Next up, we have the Helm of the All-Seeing, which is Heretic Astartes infantry, excluding dam models. Enemies set up on the battlefield from reserves cannot set up within 12 inches of the bearer. This is incredible against other units. So, for example, Grey Knights, Gene Stealer Cults, Demons, any kind of like army that has a lot of deep strike or strat reserves like shenanigans. These guys, they hate this enhancement. It is pricey. It is 25 points, so that's just above average. I think the average enhancement cost is between 15 and 20 points. But yeah, any kind of demon, any kind of Terminators, so Death Guard, for example, a 6-inch deep strike, that's not a thing anymore. Deceptors in Chaos Space Marines, and even some Loyalist Space Marine lists that are countered by this. You just stand at the choke points in the middle, or on a lane, for example, where your opponent needs to come through or wants to take advantage of. This this works really, really well with Chaos Cultists. So if you have, 1 or 2 10-man units of Chaos Cultists in the backboard, just screening out, the back line so you can't get backstabbed, for lack of a better word, This 12-inch no setup zone is really good. It denies your opponent a lot. Granted, it is only the bearer, not the unit. If it was the unit, it would be way too strong. If it was the bearer, that's the more balanced choice, which is what I completely agree with. Again, the problem is though, is it's pretty garbage if you don't use it against anything that doesn't have deep strike or reserve shenanigans. Like a lot of times people do, so it's probably on the good end of it. Like I mentioned here, it's potentially really good, but more often than not, it's going to be a bit swingy. Again, determines on how you're playing, how the opponent plays, what matchup they're running, how you counter their deep strike in general. Anyway, you just lose your value if you're basically wasting 25 points. Again, it's something that you want to acknowledge and it's meta dependent, but overall, it can be great, and I really like that. It can be great. Finally, we have the best enhancement in the book, which is Prime Test Subject. It's very expensive at 35 points. But this is, like I've said, I don't think I've ever given a 10 out of 10 before. This is an auto include. This is the best enhancement that the detachment has access to, and it's arguably one of the best enhancements I've ever seen. Only on a Heretic Astartes infantry model. +1 damage to melee weapons equipped by the bearer, and each time you make a melee attack, you can reroll the hit roll. Absolutely insane on a Chaos Lord. You slap this with a Demon Hammer, so you get flat damage 3 on your Demon Hammer, so you don't need to pop your Chance for Glory to kill elite infantry anymore. You walk up to a Custodes Warden unit, you can pretty reliably kill the whole unit with just this guy, potentially, and obviously the Legionaries can mop up a couple of damage. 4 damage dev wounds, 4 damage a hit. You're one shotting Terminators, assault Terminators. You can just the guy hits beyond hard. It's insane how strong this is. It's if granted there are counters, like how you counter a regular Chaos Lord is how you beat this guy. But if this guy gets in combat, especially with Legionaries with the rerolls for the wounding as well for fishing for sixes, god damn, I pity the fool who is at the receiving end of this guy, because holy shit, this guy hits hard. Full rerolls to hit, and like I've said here, this is the big scary like math, shall we say, of the how good he is. So you get 5 attacks base kit, strength 9 -3 AP, 4 damage per hit. Rerolling all your hits, so you can fish for lethals or sustained. You're probably going to go for sustained hits. Rerolling ones to wound off an objective or full rerolls if you're on it, which is again fishing for dev wounds. And lethals or sustained hits, 1. Horrifying, absolutely phenomenal enhancement. Bring this every game. You make time for this enhancement, and you'll see what I mean. So stratagems, again, I'm just going to be really quick. -1 to hit in range and melee is really good. This is Monstrous Visagers. Heretic Astartes infantry unit that was selected as a target in shooting or fighting. Subtract 1 from the hit roll. Ranked it as a 6, slightly above average. It's just -1 to hit. It's just nice to have. There are some, like I mentioned here, it's 1 command point, so your Chaos Lord can use it for free, or your Terminators can use it for free if you bring in a Terminator Lord. Hint, hint, bring a Terminator Lord. I'll explain later. -1 to hit in melee and range is great. You don't have to remember it. You can just pop it when you feel like it. So armies that have really bad ballistic skills, like hitting on 4s, for example, are now hitting on 5s. Indirect fire hates this. Absolutely hates it, which is again fantastic. It's just really good to have. Again, slightly above average. It's not remarkable, but it's nice to have if you need it. Fight on death, masters are watching for command point. Heretic Astartes infantry, that was selected as a target for attacks in the fight phase. If it's a damned unit, you can use it on damned units, which I think is a bit weird because most of the stuff in this detachment literally just says you can't use it. You can fight on death, but you'd have to -1 to hit, -1 to the roll. So on a 4 up, it's the old detachment rule. On a 4 up, if you're not fought that phase, you can fight on death. Whereas if it's damned, it's a 5 up. That's literally it. It's is great. Like, if you have a big brick of possessed or chosen or something where you're into blood angels and they go, right, okay, we're going to run into this unit of chosen with Fabius Bile. We want to get them out of the way so we can secure the mid board. You're probably going to die because blood angels hit very hard. This just allows you to take them with you pretty much, which is fantastic. It's a very, very good deterrent. So, for example, if your opponent, because it's only one command point, your Chaos Lord can use this for free if you want to, if you're anticipating someone charging them. Again, it is only on a 4-up, so it's not quite reliable, but it's a 50-50 chance to fight on death, which is your opponent is going to look at it, and anything that makes your opponent second guess something is always helpful in terms of not only practical gains in the game, but mental not weakness necessarily, but your opponent's questioning themselves. And anytime your opponent questions themselves rather, is an opportunity for you to exploit it. Don't be that guy and just do it where, oh yeah, these have got fight on death, so then your opponent just walked into a gotcha. Just tell them you've got it, and the fact that you tell them you've got it is the main reason as to why they're going to acknowledge it. And again, it's just any kind of melee matchup, they're going to absolutely hate this. Orcs, Emperor's Children, World Eaters, Custodes, Blood Angels, etc. Any kind of like melee-oriented army is just going to want to look at that and go, is it worth it? We might kill the unit, but there's a very strong chance that they might take. Even if you don't kill the unit, you don't take them outright. Like, it's just, you get to the point where they're that crippled, they can't really do anything. Which again is just, that's the point of the stratagem. Next up, delayed mutations. It's 2 command points, so it's quite expensive. 1 Heretic Astartes infantry that doesn't include damned. The unit automatically suffers D3 mortal wounds. Select 1 augmentation that you already don't have, and until the next command phase. So you basically get another augmentation for the rest of the turn, which is really good. Having an additional mutation can genuinely be insane. So if you're needing that extra attack, and you don't have it, so let's say you've gone for +1 strength and you've rolled hot, you've got +1 strength, +1 toughness, and you need that extra damage from your possessed or some kind of legionary unit or chosen unit, you've got the access to the +1 attack. Granted, you might lose a guy, but the risk again, it's determined on the player. It's situational, like I mentioned here. It's a 4 out of 10. It's situational. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad though. Like I said, situational does not mean bad. It means situational. Situationally, this is great. Most of the time, though, you're not going to see this situation, which is why it's only ranked as a 4. Again, it's expensive too. It's two command points. So unless you've got a way to reliably, start those command points being regenerated, you've not really got a way to deal with this. And you can lose a model on top of the dark packs, which is something you do need to worry about. Granted, we do have a somewhat reliable way to pass dark packs, given the fact that we do have, icons on most of the units. But a unit like Terminators, for example, which doesn't have an icon, if you roll bad and you kill 2 Terminators on D3 mortals, then you just 2d3 because you'd be failing your dark pack test and failing you're doing this. It can be big. So again, use at your own advice. This can potentially be really good, but use at your own discretion. Quickly, this one, specimens for the spider. This is probably the worst one in the detachment. Heretic Astartes infantry unit that's not been selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes a melee attack that targets a unit with a character in it or a character unit, you can re-roll the wound roll. Really good. After your unit has fought, if 1 or more enemy character units were destroyed as a result of those attacks, select 1 enemy unit within 6 inches and it must take a battle shock test. Underwhelming. If it's the warlord that was destroyed, every unit within 6 inches, and every enemy unit within 6 inches must take a battle shock test. I've ranked it as bad and situational. It's 2 command points. It's way too expensive. There are far better things that you can be spending your command points on than this. Very, very situational to the point where you're never going to see it. It is nice to have rerolls to wound. So if you want to spend it on, again, it's a catch-22. You can spend a command point and use the Chaos Lord's -1 to incoming stratagem costs. That's fine. If your opponent has anything to increase the stratagem cost of your unit, this is going to go up to 3 command points, which is something you are not going to want to use this for. Possessed would benefit the most from this because having rerolls to wound on a unit that has dev wounds is insanely good. But it's 2 command points. Are you really wanting to waste 2 command points potentially for that? Like I've said here, it's probably best units on a unit of Terminators with a Terminator Lord, so you get reroll wounds in melee for 1 command point as opposed to paying 2 command points, and it's great on Possessed. That's pretty much it. 2 CP is a big ask, especially due to lack of command point regeneration, which this, unfortunately, Chaos Space Marines don't really have great command point regeneration, and especially this detachment, you're not going to have ways to get it. You're primarily just going to be getting it from, playing the game, or if you're lucky, getting, a kill with the Master of Executions. And again, battle shot tests can be great, again, depending on your army, depending on the army you're up against, but majority of the time, it's just not going to be useful. Fifth, Diabolic Regeneration. Command phase, 1 Heretic Astartes unit infantry, excluding damned. 1 model, excluding character models, is returned to your unit. If a unit is battle line, D3 models, excluding character models, are returned to the unit. I've ranked this one a 7 out of 10. It's good. Resurrecting an Obliterator, because it's technically infantry. So, for example, if your opponent knows you've got this, your opponent is going to wipe out the unit of Obliterators, which is going to be a bit of a tall task depending on what he's up against. However, your Obliterators are very tanky. They do have a 5 up invul and a 2 up armor save, and they are toughness 7, 6 wounds apiece, I think, or 5 wounds apiece. They're not easy to shift. If your opponent doesn't focus them down, it's going to be a difficult time. But if they leave it, you pop the stratagem for 1 command point, and you essentially just get the free Obliterator on full wounds back, and then you can start shooting. And again, it's quite helpful for capturing objectives. So, for example, you're inevitably going to get models killed during the course of the game, no matter what you do. If you wanted to shore up a couple of dead legionaries and you've got the command point spare, having D3 back can potentially give you 2 to 6 objective control score, which would potentially, in certain circumstances, give you the extra edge. So, for example, if I have a unit of Chaos Lord, I have a unit with a Legionaries with 5 Legionaries with a Chaos Lord, I lose 3 Legionaries, I go on an objective, I lose the objective because I can't contest it. I kill, whatever's on there, so we're equal, pop the stratagem, I get D3 Legionaries back, the objective's now mine. And then obviously we're still keeping the rerolls to wound because we're keeping that unit alive, which is exactly what the Chaos Lord needs. Next up, and finally, it's the auto stimulants. This is a 9 out of 10. It's literally just advance and charge. It doesn't exclude damn units. 1 Heretic Astartes infantry unit from your army can declare a charge in which turn in which it advanced. It's advance and charge. It's really good. On the 2-inch movement, this thing is fantastic if you choose a 2-inch extra augment. Especially on Possess, you just put that like 23-inch threat range on average out there, and it's insane. Again, the command points reduction, you can use it on a Terminator Lord, you can use it on a regular Chaos Lord, and you just get access to free advance and charge. Granted, for Terminators, this is a bit of a sketchy choice. Having 7-inch movement Terminators is really good anyway, so you probably won't need this. However, if you want to forego your shooting and you need to get into melee with a unit, because obviously Terminators are horrible in melee. I'll say they're horrible to be up against in melee. This is there if you need it. Again, if your opponent knows you've got access to it as well, it's just going to make them play differently just from knowing that they've got advance and charge. They're going to play a lot more conservatively and cagey, which is something you can take advantage of, especially if you've got the extra movement. And again, mentally speaking, this is a bit of a weird take, but I'm sure people can relate. I tend to forget most of my stratagems in the game unless I have even when I'm playing and I've got the damn data cards next to me, I still forget it. Advancing charge is just simple. It's really easy to remember. You just know what you're doing. So it's a 9 out of 10. It's excellent. Standout units and combos. So Chaos Lord with the Demon Hammer and Prime Test Subject, as obvious. Like I don't know if I gushed over it too much earlier, but 3 damage flat Demon Hammer with Death Wounds, which goes to 4 damage per hit when he uses Chance for Glory. Absolutely absurd. He is the primary damage dealer of the unit, so re-rolling hits with either advance and charge. Chosen, so if you want to lead him with Chosen, I wouldn't personally. I'd use the Legionaries. Or re-roll wounds with Legionaries is absolutely something you should take advantage of. As I've said before, Legionaries are probably best with this guy simply due to the fact that they amplify his damage, and Chosen are better with other options, which I'll get into later when I'm talking. Well, I'll get into it just now, actually. Before that, though, Legionaries also getting the +1 attack augmentation makes them hit a decent amount harder on average. So a squad of 5 fully equipped with melee have 8 melee heavy melee weapon attacks as opposed to 6, so that's an extra 2 strength 8 -2 damage attacks, which could potentially kill a unit, or 15 attacks from chainswords instead of 12, which is really good. You can bump that up higher. If you have 16, you can bring it up. So you've got 4 chainswords, not 4 chainswords. Yeah, no, I'm right. Yeah, ignore me. So yeah, 15 attacks instead of 12. Second is the again, this isn't in order. This is just suggestions. 10-man chosen with a Fabius Bile as the leader. This is probably the staple of the list. You want a big 10-man unit chosen with Fabius. Fabius gives, like I've said here, I'll mention. I'll just read it. This is arguably a staple of competitive lists for creations of Bile, or at the very least, something you definitely want to consider building your list around. The overall cost of the unit is 335 points, but I would highly recommend bringing them up in a Rhino if possible, which would bump the cost to 410. Obviously, you're going to be bringing Rhinos in this detachment. I'm just going to say outright. So from the unit, you get 6-inch move, toughness 5, potentially toughness 6, and you get to, if you choose the +1 toughness augmentation, 3 wound infantry with strength 6 base melee attacks, and obviously higher because you get strength 9 with a power fist. Advance, fall back, and shoot and charge. Just saves command points, so you're not having to use auto stimulants. Reduce incoming damage on one instance to 0, thanks to Bile's Acolyte rule, which you can use once per turn. +1 strength to melee for the entire squad, and potentially +2, because you can play. Well, when Bile is attached to the unit, you get +1 toughness and +1 strength to his bodyguards. So your chosen are now T5 strength 6. You can potentially bring that to strength 7 or strength 10 power fist or toughness 6, like I mentioned earlier. That's 2 paired cursed weapons, 10 attack, strength 6 -2, 1 damage with twin link, 2 power fists at strength 9 -2, 2 damage, and 6 accursed weapon attacks. 6 accursed weapons, which is 24 attacks at strength 6 -2, AP 1 damage flat. Just absurdly good. Next up is 10 Possessed at toughness 7. So they're a primary stat check. So again, depending on what your opponent's got, if you've got like Exocrines, for example, that's just going to be horrible. Or Forge Fiends, these guys are going to get deleted by those because they're just, 3 wound infantry killers. They've got an average set range of 21 to 23 inches with advance and charge. So your opponent has to avoid them, kite them, or dedicate some serious shooting or melee to deal with them. If you get +1 attack augmentation, you essentially give them a +20% damage increase, as that's an extra 10 attacks, which can potentially mean more dev wounds, and a flat damage increase overall if you don't get the dev wounds as well, especially when you've got dart packs in addition to that. If you want to bring an MOP, a Master of Possessions, then they'll get +1 to advanced charges and rolls, which can help. It's nice to have, but I do think they're better as just a 10-man squad or a 5-man squad. 240 points is a lot of points, but adding a character which doesn't really make anything, it doesn't stand out like he used to. Granted, he is really good at killing psychers though, so if you're up against Thousand Suns, a Master of Possessions is a very good tech choice. Next up is a Terminator with the Living Carapace, +5 Terminators. Again, this guy's just stupidly expensive, and while he doesn't have, he is expensive at 110 points, but he's just stupidly durable. And while he doesn't have lone op, his durability compensates for that. He can actually do quite a lot of damage if your opponent just ignores him. Granted, he will give up Assassinate if your opponent does have Assassinate. You can just pick this guy off. However, this guy is good. Like I mentioned, potentially T6, toughness 5 base kit, 7 wounds, 2 up armor, 4 up pinball, 5 up feel no pain. Having incoming damage is very tough for anything to get rid of. He also has access to a chain fist, which is great if you manage to get into combat with vehicles. So any kind of like light skirmishing vehicle which thinks that they can handle him, he can wound it on a 3, and basically just automatically goes through, and he'll probably kill it, especially with dart packs. Finally, these are primarily just units. So Warp Talons are just incredible shock troops which can kill a unit, and then +1 attack on a unit of 5 bumps them up to 25 attacks, which is essentially another Warp Talon. So they can just jump in, kill a unit, and bounce off, which is great. Any of the augments which allow them to hit more reliably or frequently is always beneficial, as their entire role is literally just to kill units, then disappear and reappear somewhere else with rapid ingress. In this detachment, you could probably get away with bringing 5, as those extra 5 attacks will give that 20% damage increase, which might just be enough to edge you over, the kill threshold and get what you need to kill. Another sleeper hit, which I'm personally a big fan of, is the Master of Executions. So this model will give you reroll hits in melee for the entire unit. So, for example, if I take a single wound off a unit that is below starting strength, so this guy then means this guy gets full rerolls to hit, and the unit gets full rerolls to hit in melee. So if I pepper a unit and take a wound off it with, I don't know, let's say a tank, if I charge these units in, they get full rerolls to hit, which is really good. Again, you can just bring the surgical precision enhancement if you wanted to just take characters out, but personally, this guy does something that we need, which is regenerate command points. He's very, very good into killing characters on his own, so while the Chosen can deal with whatever they're in melee with, the Master of Executions can just dedicate to killing the character with dev wounds. If he does kill the character, you get a command point, which is really nice. He's just a force multiplayer unit. He's not very tanky. He doesn't have an invul, but he's just a cool model. He looks cool. He's very, very helpful, giving Chosen rerolls to hit in melee and rerolls to wound in melee if they're below half strength, the enemy unit at least. Absolutely phenomenal. So, summary, strengths, infantry-based detachment, so it's nice to see that most of our competitive data sheets in the army are getting play. Everyone likes playing infantry list. I don't particularly like running that many vehicles, so it's nice to bring out the infantry. You can choose your augmentations and roll for them at the start of the battle, so you can literally cherry pick what's best for that particular matchup. Most detachments in 40k can be quite linear and predictable with how you're supposed to be playing them. However, this detachment, you're allowed to be tactically flexible before the battle's even begun, which is really good. Bile's an auto include. Again, some people say he's not, but even I think simply for the fact that you can add him to a unit of Chosen and make him a lot tankier. Alternatively, Bile given the ability to re-roll the augments, or one of them if you get one that you want, just stupidly good. And also the blanking damage. He also can, what is it? The acolyte ability doesn't remove the acolyte. So, for example, if you shoot at Bile's unit with a las cannon, or something that'll kill, like a Forge Fiend ectoplasma cannon, which will just delete the Chosen pretty reliably because it's 3 damage, 3 AP -3. You can turn that to 0, and then if another one goes through, to Bile, let's say precision in, then he can just the surgeon has his own stat line. He'll just tank the hit, which is just really good. And finally, if you want to win, this army can reliably shut people down in the deployment zones. It's a bit of a scumbag tactic if you're playing it casually, but there are ways where if you are trying to limit test the list, you can genuinely run this list into your opponent's deployment zone, and your opponent has, again, I've misspelled quite a lot in this because there's a lot of information, so forgive me. Being a dad and doing this is quite stressful. But yeah, either way, you can just run these straightforward, completely take over the mid board and keep your opponent, wrapped up. Your army is very good at dealing with infantry anyway, so this makes it even easier for you to deal with infantry. And any kind of vehicles, we do have answers for, which is great. So early board control means more points in primary and secondary. Weaknesses, it only benefits infantry, so it's a minor weakness in all honesty, but from a purely tactical perspective, the only tangible benefit that improves our range damage of ranged infantry is the +1 ballistic skill, but as I've said earlier, I've elucidated as to why that may be a bad thing. Secondly, it's a stat checklist like knights and melee monsters like custodies can be a problem, so while we do have ways to outplay them, it's usually not favourable to be charging into a unit of custodies because nobody likes going into melee against custodies. And while our vehicles don't directly benefit from the rule, it's important to note that you will be bringing rhinos and possibly other ranged firepower, so predators, forge fiends, etc. That'll help execute the game plan. Another major weakness here as well. If your opponent has an abundance of 3 damage weaponry, so exocrines, auto cannons, forge fiends, any 3 damage flat weaponry will just ruin your game, and you will be struggling into that a lot. So here's a couple of lists. So if you want to pause to read these are fine. I will just briefly go through the reasoning because I'm on a time limit. I do apologise. So first, we've got Chaos Lord. That's leading a unit of 5 legionaries. There's 2 of them. So we've got one with a prime test subject and one with surgical precision. They're going to be leading a 5-man legionary squad each. as we need extra melee weapons to amplify the unit's damage. Both of them, both the squads will get put in one rhino. We have 2 mobs of cultists, so 2 10-man blobs, which exist to hold the home field objectives and screen out the back line so we don't get attacked from behind. Bile and the Master of Executions will. The Master of Executions also has the Helm of All Seeing. We'll go with the Chosen in a Rhino. Drop them in the mid board, stage turn 1, and then make you turn 2, you go turn, and boom, you pretty much stay there. Precision out any character threats with the MOE. Chosen can pretty reliably deal with anything that comes nearby in terms of melee. Yeah, just overall really nice. We do have Possessed, so we've got 3 units of Possessed. We've got 2 5-man and 1 10-man. Possessed units are there to alpha strike, so these guys are going to be the ones that we're going to run forward and just hit incredibly hard with. They're the shock troopers, so they can usually slip from cover to cover due to their speed, which can cause a lot of problems for your opponent due to their damage, especially with dev wounds. So we have 2 5-man units for counter-attacking, and 1 big 10-man unit for any big target that needs any kind of attention that Possess can potentially deal with. Basically, just aim for the enemy's throat and rip it out. That's the entire reasoning for this entire list. We do have a couple of vehicles, so we've brought 2 rhinos for obvious reasons, for the transporting primarily. We've brought a Predator Destructor, which is the one with the Predator autocannon, and the las cannons. That's mainly just for support and dealing with 3 wound infantry. You can blink a couple of wounds off and kill a couple of models, and your opponent's automatically going to be at a disadvantage. Your Vindicator is there just because it's a short-ranged, very durable but slow-moving tank that can help support your units and hide behind terrain if they need it. Tanks will kill the scary things and give your infantry more time to move up. That's pretty much it. It's just how it works in real life. Tanks come in, kill infantry, clear out an area, infantry come in. Easy. So the second list it's more of a board control one. So like I've said, this one's got a Chaos Lord with Prime Test Subject, Terminator Lord with a Living Carapace enhancement, and we're bringing Bile again. We've got 1 mob of cultists and 2 squads of 5 legionaries. We've got 2 rhinos again. They're the big ones, but the change is the other data sheets. So we've brought an Annihilator Predator, which is with the twin las cannon, which is the big one. Chaos Vindicators, we've got 2, so we've got some serious ranged firepower now. The 10-man chosen unit as usual. We're bringing 5 Terminators because they're going to get paired with a Chaos Lord. They're going to be I'll explain what they're going to do in a minute. We've got 2 squads of 5 Possessed and 1 squad of 5 Warp Talons. So like I said, this list is more around controlling the board. Warp Talons can be switched out for Raptors if you need utility, or you can get another squad of Possessed if you want another squad. You don't have to bring Warp Talons. But I find Warp Talons are more of a scalpel, so they can, they've got fly. They don't really care about screens that much. They can just kill a screen and then just bounce out and redeploy anywhere else. They're a lot more versatile than Possessed. Possessed are very much like a hammer. You just run them forward and smack something really hard. Chaos Lord in Terminator armor, again, undesirable to shoot at with how hard he is to kill. 5 Terminators gives him the reroll hits as well, because obviously their ability extends to the leader. Can be helpful for deep striking, catching your opponent's weaknesses for the positioning, catching them off guard. Chain Fist can also help with any kind of vehicles. So if you need to, do damage to vehicles, you've got that. Just drop them in and go kill stuff, pretty much. That's the philosophy behind this. You can sit them behind enemy lines. Sometimes, if your opponent's screen, like I mentioned, you exploit the weaknesses in positioning. You've always got that little caveat. Again, we're bringing the Bile and the 10-man chosen unit. It's just pretty much an auto-include at this point. I reckon it's probably the strongest. It's the centerpiece of the army, in my opinion. 2 Chaos Vindicators to hold lanes. So depending on the terrain matchup, you want to have 2 of them. So then that way your opponent basically has to get hit by these things. Now, granted, I have mentioned 24-inch range, which when coupled with 9-inch movement and not benefiting from the detachment rule can be a bit of a weakness. But just to position them appropriately and blow up anything that comes within the line of sight or threatens your infantry. The Predator Annihilator is there when you need long-range, hard-hitting shooting, which the Vindicators are unable to do. And the 2 squads of 5 Possessed are there to skirmish and attack any infantry stupid enough to run into them. Overall, where would I rank Creations of Bile? I would put them at 9 out of 10. They are smoking sexy style. These are arguably one of the strongest, well, it's not arguably, it's one of the 2 detachments which are incredibly strong. in Chaos Space Marines, and I find it to be not only incredibly fun to play, but it's actually very, very competitive. And that's the perfect mix. You want it fun, you want it good, and that's the way it is. So, like I've said here, most armies would kill for a detachment rule like this, and we've graciously been given it. Chaos Space Marines, much like Space Marine armies in general, tend to have very good datasheet rules-based kit without including the army rule on top of that. Creations of Bile augmentation just amplify the lethality or durability without actively impeding anything. It's objectively a superb detachment which promotes an infantry-based melee rush style of play, which is not only very fun to play, but also very competitive, which is a win-win. While it lacks vehicle support, Chaos Space Marines tend to be very good on their own without any additional support. Our infantry benefit hugely from the buffs, and being able to reactively pick them depending on the game is insanely good. And that's it. That's the summary. So, like I've said in previous videos, if you would like to like the video, if you've learned anything, or just enjoyed watching or listening to this in the background, I do love making these videos when I've got the time to do so. So, any kind of support is always appreciated. So, if you feel like you want to subscribe, that my videos have earned your respect and patronage, then I'm humbled, and I would appreciate it. But yeah, I am wanting to try and get more growth on the channel so I can hopefully improve the videos. Maybe do like a video camera in the corner, just operate more, better looking stuff essentially. So I'm not sat talking to the computer for nearly an hour. Um, but yeah, regardless, like I said, it was nice speaking to you all. And no matter where you are in the world, always remember to praise the dark gods. Cheers, guys.